Welcome to another exciting episode of the Business of Digital podcast, featuring your hosts, Matt Siltala and Dave Rohr. Hey guys, excited to be here with you on another one of these Business of Digital podcast episodes. How's it going, Dave?
It is going well.
So, we're continuing this, what we're calling this 100th episode series, and we have a wonderful guest for you. I would like everybody to say hi, virtually wave, and give a big shout out to Dana Todd. How's it going, Dana?
It is awesome. How are you? I'm so glad to be here, gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's our pleasure. Seriously, and just with this series and everybody that we've talked to and just so far how it's gone, this has been probably one of the most fascinating things that we've done on this podcast. So it's really exciting to kind of have you on here. And I'm going to do to you what I've done to everyone here in getting started and kicking it off. And I find this fun because, and I can't even take credit for this because this was something that Dave thought of, but when we're talking about like industry and how long we've been in this industry and what we've been doing, that meme series of how old are you or how old were you when and whatnot. And so kind of what we want to know is how internet old are you? Are you Alta Vista old? Are you like Dave and your Florida Update old? Are you like me and like Netscape old?
Okay, so Matt, I have another one.
Yeah?
I am first conference old. I met Dana Todd, Barbara Cole, and Nacho Hernandez.
There you
which
go.
was the same time as the Florida Update. So that goes back to, a few years ago.
Or with some of the people that I'm we're gonna talk about them in a minute, but some of the people we talked to were like dial-up old. So
yeah, I have to tell you, I kind of went when I first started developing. Well, I'll tell you in a nutshell. We'll do an easy one for fun. I am Yahoo search banner ad old.
For your digital side. This isn't just,
Right.
all marketing or...
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. No, I was pre-internet. So I've been doing advertising since advertising was just print and television.
Wow.
When I first got into it, we built a $1 million website. That was my first website, was a $1 million website. Because things cost that much back then.
Yeah. Crazy.
And Yahoo was still just a manually edited list of links. Their very first advertising product was banner ads, and we got a 40% click rate on our banner ad.
How many zeros
awesome.
over? How many zeros over would that be today?
Oh my God! I wish to God. Maybe? I wish they would bring that back. Oh yeah.
We've been doing a lot of reminiscing of the old days like that on these, it seems.
Yeah, and I actually bought the very first paid pay-per-click advertising on Alta Vista. Google wasn't there yet, so they didn't have anything like that. They were not monetized. So yeah, Kat Sita and I were running we're advertisers on the very first auctioned link pay-per-click system.
Wow. That's crazy.
That's an old credit. Oh, one more. And I have a witness on this. I was the first person to say organic related to SEO.
I was wondering, okay, Dave, you want to take it over?
That Mr. Bozer, who we spoke with just recently, did credit. He didn't think he said it. I believe, and I'll probably misstate this.
He ended up giving.
I think he borrowed it from you, or he heard you say it, and then he said it, and someone tried to give him credit, and he was pretty sure that it's you that coined that first.
Yes, that's true. And I didn't pay Greg to say that, actually.
Because we were actually talking to you after we talked to him. So, yeah,
Noel McMichael was the one who brought it up first. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so there you go. I am an ancient grandmother of search and digital.
So I guess to kick things off, and this is one of the questions that I love finding out, because I look back to some of my fondest memories, like in the early days, or just when I was working with whoever, and just like you made this simple change and it took you here, there, or whatever. And so, what is when you think back to the early industry days, what is the thing that what's like the one thing that you can think of that excited you the most about this industry, that just made you like, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next little while? Does that make sense?
It does, and I can tell you, I was like addicted to the internet site from the very first time I saw it. So I had never actually seen the web because I had AOL back in the day, and anytime you pressed the World Wide Web icon, my whole computer was like a Mac 2E, and it would just shut down. So I was like, I do not know what the web is, and I wasn't able to see it until
Wow.
our accountant. I had a small traditional agency at that time with a partner, and we, through our accountant, met this startup company. It was one of the first digital agencies in San Diego, and it was run by this professor, a retired professor named Dr. Frederick Bien. And I went in there and they had a ISDN line, which was just like, oh, wow. I was like, powerful, man. You didn't have the modem sound. And, so I go in there and it's an all male staff, all a bunch of engineers that he had recruited out of school. Like they were math majors and some engineers. And I was like, let me see the web. and of course we went to, this is not a family show, is it? Just in case.
Well, you're fine.
Okay, I was going to say, I'll let Dave answer that because he's the one that's always fighting iTunes with profanity.
Yeah.
I just have to flag it. That's easy.
Yeah, I mean, things were definitely a lot less politically correct back then. It was the early days. And frankly, most of the stuff that was on the web was porn. But it was, it was kind of
I
interesting
thought it was
to
still
look.
like that.
Well, yeah.
Most of the bandwidth, I think, is either video games, Netflix, or porn at this point.
It's true, but there was one of the most popular site on the internet back then was TOTW. Do you know what that means?
No.
It was Tits of the Week.
Oh.
So like Hot or Not, but a little bit older.
Yeah. So this was the web in 1995.
Wow.
I think that was blocked at my university.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, to be honest, I was so impressed, not just by but just the idea that, oh my God, here's this stuff I'd been reading about in magazines. I was reading like Mondo 2000, and they were talking about the well and all these listservs and things like, internet communities. And here I was seeing it visual for the first time in my life, and it just blew my mind. And I was like, I just got to be part of that. So very shortly thereafter, I actually joined that agency as their very first account executive. And so when you ask me what excites me is the newness of this industry every single day. It's a constant state of innovation and breaking things and making things and trying to monetize it. It's a really survival of the fittest, survival of the craziest kind of thing. I mean, it's the Wild West every day, forever and ever and ever.
And you touched on something that, we chatted a little bit with Greg about as well. And that, I think it's so important for people to hear and understand this, that, because it's so new, and even to this day, if people aren't testing and breaking and blowing stuff up and burning things to the ground, I don't know, how much credit they can say that they really have, because, I look back to a lot of the, the stuff that I did back in the day, and, most of it was, a lot of the stuff that I burned or I joked with Greg that I think that the last name Siltala is forever. If anyone that has the last name Siltala tries to apply for a Google AdSense account, they're going to automatically get denied just because of it's my last name. So sorry, all you people. But anyway, so I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but for me, I found how important just testing and burning and just playing with it and figuring it out. We had to.
Yeah, you really did. I mean, because nobody wrote a rule book. And they still don't. And we talk about this in the pain. And one of the things that, when we started Simpo, one of the pains that we were going through is that the industry at the time was growing rapidly, and we did not have employees coming in who could do anything yet, because it wasn't being taught in universities. You had to just get in there and try it yourself. And so a lot of the challenges of scaling anything in the industry are the same thing that makes it so interesting to be in, which is that novelty, which is you got to break it to make it kind of thing. I mean, that's SEO, I think, probably exemplifies that the most in the early days. And I think there's still probably a fair amount of shenanigans that happen and people still get away with. Oh, but I think on the advertising side, I wouldn't say there's less innovation. but I'd say it's slowed down a little bit since Google and Facebook basically ate everything from a monetization perspective.
Well, something that you had mentioned right there got me thinking about. So, like my daughter, she did her first year she just completed her first year at Arizona State University, and I don't want to throw like ASU under the bus or anything, or the program she's in.
We already did that on one episode.
Yeah, well,
we may have thrown them under the bus.
Well, I'm just saying, like some of the stuff she comes back because she knows obviously what industry I'm in, and she'll come back and say, "So my professor was saying X, Y, and Z about SEO. Is that true?" And it couldn't have been farther from the truth, or it might have been something that was somewhat truthful back in like 2003. And I'm like, it's 2019. Are we still like for reals? And so like to your
Wasn't
point,
it keywords? Like,
yeah.
Didn't they say keywords matter? And that, yeah.
Yeah, they were trying to tell them how like keywords still mattered and
well, the meta keywords tag to be
meta
specific,
keywords tag. Yeah, that's anyway. So just crazy stuff like that. And there's like so many other examples, but it just so it's like fast forward to what you were talking about, how back in the day, and still trying to figure. I still think we're there. I don't know. We're doing a little bit better, but
I'll actually continue to defend SEO keywords, the meta keywords. I know they don't matter for Google, but they do matter. I run an e-commerce site, so we can use that tag that field very easily for our own internal indexing. So yes, they do matter, Jen.
Well, that's the only time whenever I talk to someone, does your internal search require that you use it? No, then please get rid of it. But that's the only time I can ever think of, because there are a lot of internal engines that if you want it to, and that's one way, and you probably use it too, to make sure it always does show up for something for that, even if it's not on the page or, I know what Dana's project is. So if that designer doesn't create something or doesn't put it in there, you can force it in there.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe that wasn't the best example to start with, but I'm talking like crazy stuff like, hiding text and, keyword, your keyword density. And anyway, just, I don't know. So, all right.
Although it's funny, I talk to a lot of things don't work. A lot of things still do work. It's always interesting to me what SEOs say out loud versus what they tell you at cocktail parties. And I think that's the whole reason people still go to pub.
Oh, that's one of the only reasons, I think, right?
Because they throw a mean party and they do a wonderful job of keeping the community together. But there are still things. Even just last month, I was talking to a guy, and I'm not even going to tell you what site they had. It was a legit, very large enterprise, and he admitted that they actually were doing some seriously shady experiments with doing spamming, disposable email domains, link farms, you name it. They were black hatting all over the place, and they basically just did it as safely as they could, keeping it separate from the main domains and everything else. And that's how they get ahead. So it's really interesting. Like, you hear all that, and I'm an avowed white hat. I hope your takeaway isn't Dana will cheat, but it gets frustrating to me when I hear, I talk to my peers.
I'd be worried about what Dave writes up about it more than anything. No,
I get so frustrated when I hear, I'm talking to my peer CMOs and digital people, and I'm just like, y'all are really just cheating? Dang it. Why shouldn't I want to cheat. I really want to cheat.
Well, part of it is like I literally just had a call earlier today about what time is it? Hour and a half ago. And they've done the audit of the links, multiple sources, and they've gone through everything. And they're like, the only difference is they have some of these junky links that are out there. And I know I can get them cheap. So I'm going to get a couple of them cheap because they have them and they're ahead of me. So, we talked with this Greg the other day, and and other times as well. It's if everyone else is doing it and they're ahead of me, then why can't I do it? And as an SEO, I can try to talk them off that ledge and say, how about you're the only one standing when there's a shakeup? But I don't know if that shakeup will be next week or if it'll be in 6 months or 6 years.
Yeah, if you've got financials breathing down your neck, you have to hit a target. So
yeah, especially now, if building links and, how long does it take for this to make an impact from an SEO or anything?
True.
It can take months or weeks or years.
And for the record, I'm not cheating. If you're out there listening, Google.
For the record, let's make that very clear.
I just get frustrated when I feel like everybody else is doing this stuff and getting away with that.
Considering I've spent a bunch of time on that site, I know you're not.
True. Very true. Yay. So let's talk about early advertising.
Let's do it.
Because it is really, well, just not just advertising, but monetization methods. Because we have gone through so many changes in the industry and full circle in a way. Banner ads were like literally the first thing anybody ever thought of. And then they came up with text links. And then they came up with auctioned text links. And, then we came up with behavioral sponsored things, sponsored listings within the organic. There's just so many monetization schemas that have come along. And it seems like, and to my earlier point, it seems like the innovation has somewhat died there. And I feel like a lot of that was killed off in the recession, because there were some really interesting things that were coming to play in roughly 2008 to 2010. And a lot of them just kind of disappeared in the great destruction of the American economy, because California was hit pretty hard too. So there were tons of startups that I knew that failed during that time, including my own news force. And it feels like everybody just sort of limped away at that point. And when we came back, Facebook had taken over the world, and it was like, oh, well, I guess we'll just do that. And so it was really funny to me that there's really been no radically new and exciting advertising vehicle in almost a decade, y'all.
I think, well, yeah, the only things that I see are, and this might be rolled back with legislation coming up for, Facebook and Google, but they have so much data that it's now just the number of, and I was just messing with this yesterday for one of my clients, is, looking at the audiences and the topics and the lookalike audiences that you can target, because they know so much about what people are and what industry they're possibly in and what they search for and what they've bought or what they might be interested in buying, that I can get all of this audience data and target those people with, again, what, banner ads, or, search enhanced type stuff. But yeah, that's the only real big change that I've seen is, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, and maybe Amazon, but Amazon's basically just trying to monetize their page views more. And I don't know of anything else other than we just are getting more granular on people, but there's nothing else. It's all the same. It's either a text link or a banner or, well, what about native advertising?
Yeah, well, so actually NewsForce was intended to be NewsForce was intended to be essentially an advertorial thing. So it was sponsored content, and I think with the native advertising came about as a word that was applied to Facebook, and it's gotten really watered down. I actually almost don't even know what it means anymore to have native advertising. It basically just seems to mean it mirrors the content that you're already in a feed typically. So whether that's a news feed or a social media feed. So I guess by that same argument, you could say any sponsored post in Instagram or Facebook is a native advertising, or like you said, pay to play. So yeah, I mean, but that's not new, dude. That's like since the dawn of time.
Well, yeah, magazines have done it. You go through and when you get stuck on airplanes, Matt, that you ever get stuck on airplanes. It's like that. What is this 20 pages of just junk in the middle? And it's just, some city or some, list of doctors have paid for, to be the place you should go.
And those could be incredibly effective, though, because that was my very first job outside of the journal as a journalist. And then I moved over to the dark side of advertising. My very first job was writing advertorial copy in these special supplements. And I'm telling you, man, they worked.
I've heard they still do.
They do, of course, because it's not, if you're if you're stuck on a plane or if it's interesting you in any way, shape, or form, it's a very immersive way of feeding you information. So yeah, they're still very effective. This was the primary reason why we created NewsForce, which was essentially sponsored headlines. So we would convert a standard, what's called an LREC unit, think of a medium-sized rectangle ad, and we would turn that into a 3-headline unit that looked, it had a mark around it. It was clearly designated. We weren't trying to fool anybody, but it looked a lot more like a regular news headline. And it was typically drawn from press releases or other type of advertorial and it was going gangbusters. We got really high engagement on it. So people will click it. People are interested in reading and consuming. So it's funny to me how many people poo-poo advertorial, in that when you look at the numbers, people engage. They really do.
So, just all of this has got me thinking about, like, I usually save this question for a little bit later, but I just think it's appropriate to ask it now. But with us talking about this, and where do you see the future of it being? Like, what do you see, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years from now with it?
It's always such a dangerous question, and I'm not going to say something stupid like VR. Woo!
Hey, we won't. Well, Dave might hold you to it, but we won't hold you to it.
VR on maps is an interesting thing, but beyond that, I don't know.
I think actually, to be honest, some of the coolest stuff that I think really will ultimately take off is akin to VR and AR, what actually is the digital signage, the smart signage. And that's actually going to be very dependent on legislation around facial recognition. So as we know, they've just sort of disallowed it in San Francisco in many systems, for Amazon, I think it was. But that technology is very, very real. And people, you've probably seen the videos and stuff where people interact. It's getting cheaper and cheaper. So between that and people using that type of technology either in their homes, like the Amazon Look, or in an external fashion, like in a dressing room, I do think you are going to see more of that crossover between the digital space and our physical spaces. As retailers are trying desperately right now to find a reason to be after the retail apocalypse, they're increasingly looking for these experiential things. And they've got the money to be able to spend for virtual dressing rooms and things like that. Anytime you ever go to CES, those are some of the things that really just fascinate people. We're all drawn to our own images in a mirror, right? And so who cares if it's actually secretly recording all of our emotional state, what we're wearing, how much we spend at time, right? That to me is probably the area where it's very minority report, but why not? People are actually looking for that type of thing.
Well, see, one thing I thought was fascinating, and maybe Dave could talk a little bit about this more, but when we're in Bend, the Deschutes, I believe it's Deschutes Brewery, but or a lot of the different, again, Dave can help me with this, but a lot of the different beers and the names that they have, what they were doing was they were using virtual reality to kind of show you the areas or the lakes or the names or whatever that their beers were named of, what those came from. And I thought that was a fascinating part of it. And I don't know if I completely butchered that, Dave.
Nope, that was Deschutes. They did a YouTube series at one point with all of their beers are named after the local kind of nature, high main attraction points, kind of, I guess is landscapes. And what they did is they did a small YouTube video series where you could put on your glasses and you could really see it and immerse yourself in that space to see where that beer's name and the idea of it came from.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, I mean, I would spend time with that.
Yeah.
And I think what we're seeing in all our generations is, and phones were sort of our first thing to wean us off staring at our computer screens, but now we just stare at the small thing in our hand. There's a desire for people to interact with IRL, right, in real life experiences. So being able to have those digital experience literally wallpapered into your events, I think is not going to go away. And I think there's some logical places where we can build technology there that can be a lot of fun. I mean, these should be, and not just for selling you advertising. To me, I always look at the true value of digital is the incredible assistive technologies that have come out of this. Everything from helping us in medical, mental health, communication, politics. I mean, having now seen for 2 decades what has come about from the early days of Tits of the Week to now tumbling entire, diplomatic regimes, that's a pretty big arc right there. So
when you put it that way. Oh my gosh.
It really is fantastic. Yeah. So I think
there's
we're going
to puns in there too. No, okay, I'm moving on.
Somebody, if Tits of the Weeks isn't still up, they should put that back up.
Well, It's.
But I would like to see a male version of that, so that us ladies could have a little bit of that.
What, man boobs of the week? No.
No, because that's just one doesn't want to go there. But chest of the week, right? Butts of the week. I don't know, something. We can get egalitarian here. I'm just so gonna get in trouble right now by everybody.
As soon as this is over, Dave, can you just edit all of that out?
All of that out. Well,
yeah. I don't have employees right now, so I can't be charged with
anything like politically, yeah. So, when you were talking about all that, it just makes me laugh at myself even because I think back to, it wasn't even that long ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and I just bought my first big screen 65-inch TV, and I remember sitting there thinking, I'm never going to consume my TV on on my phone. That's just so stupid. I got this nice big screen right here, and I probably consume 90% of my TV watching or whatever on my phone. Just exactly what I said I wouldn't do 7 years ago. So I find that fascinating as falling victim to it myself even.
Although I think I'm probably going to have to invest in a series of ophthalmological solutions for people who have eye damage. I do feel like all of us are getting eye damage and neck damage and all this stuff from our interactions with devices. It's getting a little ridiculous.
I feel like I'm exactly. I feel like I'm going through something with my left eye with that right now. But anyway, that's another story.
It's like old people. We have old people. We have to sit around and talk about our lumbago.
Get off my lawn.
Arthritis.
This is
so. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was gonna say this is the the old curmudgeons week of shows. So yeah, everyone get off our lawn. The one thing, Dana, I just thought of, and I do not have one in my house. I do not have an Alexa. I do not have Siri. Well, I guess my wife has Siri, but we don't have anything that orders or Google Voice or Alexa. But what about would you consider this marketing or of what type? I don't know. But the Amazon reorder buttons.
Are you talking position 0 or all of them?
No, not position 0.
No, they're technically IoT, but yeah, they're basically.
Yeah, so IoT.
Yeah. Yeah, because all they do really is sort of send a small signal to something. So yeah, I think they're still. Yeah, they're still technically considered IoT because they're essentially dumb devices that just do one thing.
What do you think about the IoT and advertising? Is there going to be a space with, Samsung and GE with their refrigerators? Is that going to be something that you would see? With the IoT and melting with Amazon and Whole Foods, we know you shop here already, or do you want Peapod to deliver? Or do you want your local grocery store to deliver because we see you're already out of these things? So push this button.
I think that might work for some people, but I think it's pretty overcomplicated, to be honest. And I love the idea of it, but I feel like in practicality, that's not the way I operate. It's not the way I shop. Yeah, there's the same 3 or 4 items, but I always want the freedom to untether from a pre-programmed shopping trip. And I think a lot of women are like that too. I don't know about guys who make all the decisions.
It's the end of the week. You usually do your, do you want us to deliver your Nutrisystem or do you want us to reorder stuff? I don't know. I just wonder if those systems, do we really need the Nest system that, monitors everything you talk about and connects to all your devices and shuts them all down?
I don't think so. I really feel like I think we've gone overboard with too many to can I make this versus do we really need this? And actually there's a whole podcast from one of the founders of Etsy who's just should this technology exist? I'm I look at some of the things there's an IoT toothbrush that tells you whether you've brushed long enough. That's just stupid. I don't want to track my teeth brushing. There's a lot of overcomplication right now. And I think a lot of that's tied to fundraising and money making. And, people invent stuff because they can and because they can con some poor fool into backing it. So
unless it's something that could get your kids to actually brush their teeth for 2 minutes straight, no.
Then just put bubble gum on the tooth. There are, but
I'm with you. I'm with you.
What
totally.
works really better for that instead of an IoT for when you're training kids? They've got toothbrushes that have a little song that plays, and that gives them an auditory feedback. It's time to the right amount. That's the kind of stuff.
VCs won't back that.
But of course not, because it doesn't raise you $8 million on So You have to have something that's just stupid enough to get a crazy valuation. Actually,
So speaking of stupid, and I know we've been talking different tactics or whatnot, but there is this. I want to make sure I ask you a few questions before we run out of time, because I could, we could continue to talk about a lot of this stuff forever, and I love it. But there's stuff that I definitely want to hear. But I'm just curious, and this has always been fun. But what is like one crazy tactic that you've ever saw, that you've seen, or that someone did, or maybe even you did? Like, what's one thing that has actually like shocked you over the course of your career with the digital space?
I'm shocked every week. It's really hard. I was literally this morning. Here's the shock I had this morning. Somebody had sent me a link. So right now I'm in fashion, and I'm doing custom made fashion for women. So I have a platform that helps.
Give the whole pitch.
All right.
Yeah, do
Give
it.
the whole pitch now.
And then expect Go ahead. I was going to say, then expect my daughter to like be reaching out to you now.
Awesome. Yeah. So Dana is an e-commerce marketplace for women to buy custom-made fashion. But in reality, that's sort of the front end. What it really is a platform that enables people who make custom clothing to reach audiences and to scale their business. So we've got a full tech roadmap that involves a lot of back-end stuff to have assistive services and tech for them to be able to scale themselves. So that whole world I've been in now for 2 years, trying to understand what's called FashTech. It's a whole different world of technology when you get into the front end fashion stuff and e-commerce, plus the back end manufacturing. It's really cool, really amazing, but heavy duty technical stuff here. So people send me weird stuff all the time. And I get this link today from a friend who's like, oh, look at this. And it was a custom dress that exists only as a digital file, and it was auctioned for Ethereum cyber currency valued now at about $9,500. So someone paid real Ethereum for a fake dress that exists only in the blockchain.
Oh my word.
So I look at that and I'm like, okay, I feel like this is the sock puppet days all over again. I feel like a crash is going to happen any minute. But at the same time, I'm like, why didn't I think of that? I could have saved a whole lot of time and money. So, I mean, if we could get a bunch of those fools, that'd be awesome. But I don't know that everybody's...
That first pizza bought with Bitcoin looked almost like a good deal.
Exactly. Oh,
at least they could eat it.
So you know what else I was going down today, memory lane, before you guys? So do you remember the 1,000,000 pixel homepage?
Yes! Yes, I remember that.
It is. I actually just looked at it this morning, and that dude's out there. He just raised $88 million for his app, right? So
oh my gosh.
Stuff like that. I'm like, the first time you look at it, you're like, and again, I can call something stupid like the digital toothbrush, and someone can still make $1 bajillion out of it. And then I'm the one who looks stupid for not believing in it. So I think almost anything can work once and maybe never again.
Well, how many sites popped up after that million?
Oh, yeah.
It was like, 2 million and 5 million and
yeah.
10 million. I was like, no, it happened once. It was cool.
Well, actually, I was thinking I would use that as like in place of Kickstarter for fundraising on my business. What do you think about that? If I had like a big picture of a dress and all my friends could just buy 10 by 10 pixels to color it in, and I'll do my fundraising that way. What do you think?
Hey,
whatever works.
Whatever works. Like, we're talking about like these stupid ideas.
Real quick.
Well, friend of mine has a book called The Power of Starting Something Stupid. And so that's what I think of, and basically these stupid ideas and end up, a lot of the stupid, I mean, some of these ideas are stupid, yes, but a lot of these stupid ideas end up, I saw a tweet the other day that talked about how everybody thought Uber, or taxi people thought Uber was stupid. Cable people thought Netflix was stupid. Just a whole series of stuff like that, and I find it fascinating, but...
I actually thought that auctioned advertising links on search engines was stupid. And I said so on the record. Because at the time, they didn't have any bid management systems. So you had to manually move your bids by a penny.
Oh, yeah.
And so on the first day it ran, our report to the community was, well, it costs $250 in agency time to manage $50 in spend. So that doesn't make any sense. And so I was like, well, this is dumb. We're not going to do this. So, now Google owns all of the clicks in the world. So I was famously wrong and happy to admit it.
You were wrong under that system.
Yes, under that system. And AltaVista is no more, as we know. But
yeah, speaking of Uber, it still cracks me up when I see that silly meme where it's like, we all grew up, don't talk to strangers, don't get in strangers' cars, don't ride with people you don't know. And here we have an app that basically hails a car that we don't know to come get us to take us somewhere.
It's true.
And it's against everything we were ever taught as kids. That, don't talk to strangers. Oh, well, hello, stranger. I'm going to talk to you now for the next 15 minutes while we drive you somewhere.
Same thing with Airbnbs. Yeah. Go stay in the house that you don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember thinking that was dumb, too. Almost every one of the unicorns I thought was probably dumb. So maybe you shouldn't ask me these future of questions.
well, everything she just said is dumb. Maybe you should go and start. So someone go start an IoT toothbrush.
Just don't run it past Dana first. Or actually run it past, and if she says it's stupid, then go for it.
Because you got $1 billion item.
Double down. So let's just move on to the next question then. I'm curious, who inspires you? Okay, whether it could be someone in the past in the industry or someone that you're seeing rocking now or whatever, but I'm just curious, like, who inspires Dana?
I'm always looking for stories of people who are doing really big groundbreaking things, even if they're spectacular failures. So early on in my digital career, and he was famous in the cable industry. There was this guy named John Malone. And it's really interesting in the full loop of things. Elon Musk just launched a satellite network. They're going to try to deliver internet via satellite. Well, that is not a new idea. John Malone, who had made his fortune from cable back in the day, launched the Iridium network back in the late 90s, trying to do the exact same thing. And he raised what seemed like an insane amount of money back then to do this. And then ultimately it failed. But that's a moonshot, man. Literally a moonshot. This is in the 90s. And most people didn't even know what to do on the internet or have any means of actually even utilizing this in their homes. Yeah, exactly. But there was no such thing as broadband back then. But to try to think that far in advance and to convince that many people to give you money to literally shoot things into the space, wow. So you look at stuff like that, and then it was a spectacular failure. But did he just go home and cry? And nah, he went on and did other things. So the people who inspire me are the ones who knock it not just to the fence, but beyond the fence. And even if they don't get it all the way there, they aim like they are. So certainly Malone. I love Arianna Huffington. I think she's in a constant state of reinvention for herself. Political figures, of course, that I admire. Feminists everywhere. Yay, women.
Love it.
And, I like to be inspired every day. And to me, the people who break rules for positive reasons are the ones who set the bar for all of us, I think.
You opened it up a little bit, and I don't want us to have to go off on a certain tangent that we don't want to, but
go on a tangent.
I would
do it.
I would love for you to, because you talked about earlier, you walked into the room and you were the only female, and a bunch of tech or math nerds, and this industry is very heavy, male, obviously. And so what advice would you give to, young up and coming females in the industry, and like what can they do? What can we do? Like, how can we continue to make things better?
What can Matt tell his daughter?
Yes. No, that's great. That's perfect example, Dave, because she's a almost 19-year-old, finished first year of school. She's going into basically this space. What can we do to help her get her along and help her get past a lot of the stuff that maybe you've had to get through? If that makes.
I will have to say that the search marketing space was very welcoming to women early on. It was actually almost like 50-50 back in the day when we first started out. And you remember those early days, Dave, going to the conferences. It really wasn't overwhelmingly male. It might have been overwhelmingly male in the engineering pits, but there was a lot of female representation. So it always felt really supportive and positive. There really wasn't much of that. And in fact, it was funny because when the very first booth babe showed up at search engine, I forget what, it was SES, I think, Search Engine Strategies. Yeah. And a booth babe is like a scantily clad chick or series of chicks that stand there and hand you crap. And all the women really got upset about it. And
I always avoided them.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm like, I'm trying to talk to them and ask a question, and I'd ask them a question
They
like
had
very
no clue.
technical about like the bidding software or something, and they'd be like, "Oh, I can't help you." You know?
Yeah,
I'm
I think
well,
it was
then-
I think that was best of, I don't remember who it was. But yeah, so we actually sort of created a bit of a stink with the show managers and told them, hey, this is not adding value to our experience here. And we were listened to. I don't know if they ever changed what they did, but it was openly discussed, and it wasn't rancorous. It was just like, this isn't really who we are as an industry, because we listen to each other's brains, not t-shirts. So it was, I think that changed a lot actually over the years. Things just moved away from where we were in the early days. I think anytime you have a new and novel space where it's people who are driven by a common purpose of exploration and discovery, that makes everybody equal, or at least it seemed to draw the people who were curious and open-minded. It's later when things get into a space where there's scarcity or power fights and things like that, where it's a more mature industry or more mature organizations, then you get into a lot of that BS. But so what I'd say to your daughter is, well, did she grow up with brothers? I mean, just listen to me.
Yeah,
there you go. So I was lucky. I didn't have to learn. I was raised with brothers. So, I had to fight for every meal I ever got from those guys.
She has. Trust me.
So that made it a lot easier, just, being able to talk to dudes. But to be honest, just be who you are. Be who you are, be smart. Answer questions, ask lots and lots and lots and lots of questions. You will learn. They will feel good about what they're, giving you as information. And that's how you both succeed. I think there's so much give and take everywhere intellectually. And that's how people bond, no matter what gender or gender spectrum they are.
I love that. I think back to, and I like what you said about, because I remember like back in the days, and it's only seemed like recently that it seems like there's been a big push of like, hey, we're not represented well, or more people are wanting to use social to make it a stink. And I don't know if it's something that has been bloated or not. Like, I just look back to my own experiences, and like the one of my very first mentors and the person that's helped me from the beginning in this industry, Deborah Masteler. And so she took me under her wing and has been a great friend for a long time. And I look back at a lot of the panels that I was at, like even 12 years ago, and I was the only male on the panel. And so anyway, I appreciate hearing what you say, is I guess what I'm saying, because I feel like in the last couple of years, there's just been this push to say how wrong things are, and again, I'm not saying that there's not stuff out there. People are going to like yell at me and whatever, but it's interesting to hear your take on that, is what I'm saying, I guess.
Well, I do think also that women are still a little bit more reticent to ask for speaking opportunities and carve out priority time for such. It's always funny to me when I go to Twitter in the middle of the day and it's all like dudes tweeting. I'm like, aren't you working? Who's working here? All the ladies are silent. So you know what, chicks, I think you should just make sure you carve out at least a certain amount of time per day for self-promotion, because that will help you get the furthest ahead.
I think all people should, all businesses. Just, if you want to be the expert, you have to be heard. And I think that's part of the problem, maybe, I think, and of course I'm a guy, so I honestly don't know. And I will be the first. But, like my wife, she's busy working. So, she's in-house, busy working, head down, fighting those fights and, and then, doing her thing. So she doesn't have a ton of time these days to go and she can't promote stuff. But I think if you're an in-house person, you need to look for ways to get your voice out there in one way or the other. And if you're a small business and you don't want to just talk about what you do, talk about other things. Like, I have multiple Twitter accounts, and if you look at my one Twitter account, my main one, it's probably a mix of news, sports, harassing my friends, promoting my friends' projects.
Music.
You can do a lot of different things with one account or Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, it's true. It doesn't have to be.
But you have to, if you don't set aside at least, after lunch, I usually look at it. In the morning, I might look at it, and at night, but it's just 5 minutes. I scan through. If there's nothing interesting, or if I didn't read anything interesting, I won't share it.
Yeah, and in the IRL version of that is the power lunch, right? So women, I think, don't seek to get to know executives on a personal basis, but I can tell you those cocktails and those lunches really matter, because that's where business is done, that's where relationships are formed. And I know that it gets a little tricky in the Me Too era, but you can't ghettoize yourself from that growth track just because you're shy or you're afraid that somebody won't talk to you. And if you feel uncomfortable having lunch alone with a man, or then bring a couple women, bring a group of them, or make it a mixture of people, but create spaces for yourself to bond with important people in your company, because that will go a long way towards your own growth.
Well, it's crazy. I've always felt like I've had a good grasp on certain kinds of things, or what you've had to deal with, and until my daughter started working, she works at a theater, and the stories that she comes back and tells me, like, that creepy old men do or say, or like even coworkers not letting her do her job because they continue to ask for like dates or stuff, and I'm like, seriously? Like, I mean, I this is coming from me. I thought that I had a pretty good idea of the kind of stuff that you guys had to deal with, and then she's coming back and telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, is this what the world's full of? These kind of creepy men? Like, it just kind of baffles me sometimes.
Yeah. Well, the crazy part is it doesn't even matter how old you are. Like, okay, I'm 54 now, so you wouldn't exactly be thinking that I'm the kind of person who's going to have to worry about that. But yeah, it still actually happens to me. Even just a couple of years ago, I was at a networking party, and I was having conversations with, he's a very prominent attorney and he's quite an important person. And I thought we were having a great conversation that was business oriented. It turns out we weren't, as I found when he put his hand on my knee,
Jeez.
I was just like, oh, really? God. Ow. Ow. You think once you have a C in the front of your title that's going to keep that crap from happening, but nah, it's still there. You just get better at rebuffing it or ignoring it, moving on.
Well, I like the advice that you've shared on it, for reals. Anyway, I thought it was good. So, Dave, any final thoughts or questions for Dana?
No, I think what you should do is take Dana's advice, and like every time Matt and I are in the same town together, we go and have lunch.
I love it.
We have a point. Anytime I'm downtown Chicago, if I know I'm going to be there, I might ping some of my old coworkers, my old bosses. Dana and I I've dragged her out in various places. We've gone to concerts. Nice. Try to drag people out that even though we're 30 miles apart.
Yeah.
I'm not always downtown, and she's lately been traveling all over the place. So, anytime I travel to a new city or I have conferences or something somewhere, I try to think about who in my network of LinkedIn or Facebook or anyone I know from the industry, and, just meet them for lunch or meet them for coffee and just catch up with them. That time spent in real life is so much awesome, so much more than just tweeting back and forth or pinging each other on Facebook.
Very true.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if you have any final thoughts on that, Dana, or anything you want to share before we conclude here, but I'd love to
let you go and grow your business.
Yeah, we'll stop bothering you.
No, I think it's awesome. Well, actually, I'll follow up on that, because we had talked a little bit before we went on live about how where I am now after all these years of inventing digital things and working within the digital ecosystem. I'm back to doing things in a very real space. I literally was at the Whole Foods parking lot this past weekend, sticking flyers on people's windshields.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, the learning of that is don't rely too much on one channel. Always think integrated, and never be afraid to hustle.
Well, I love hearing the trunk club thing, or the trunk thing. Where was it? Downtown somewhere.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago.
Yep.
I love hearing that, Dave, because I don't know if you made a point to hear what she had just said. That's something that Dave and I are preaching all
I
the
try
time.
not to listen to Dana, honestly.
About not,
I've known her for what year? 15 years now or so. I try not to
time.
listen to her too much.
but just the whole like everything in one basket, and it's such great advice. And so, anyway, Dana, I really appreciate just you taking your time and carving out some time with us today to chat about this. And I just wish you the best of luck in all these ventures. And or actually, that does remind me of one final question I have. When you mentioned FashTech, did you coin that term?
No, but it seems like the people who are using it are not using it the way I am. So of course,
Okay.
you know me, I'm actually started a meetup group called Fash Nerds where I'm participating in FashTech. I'm making it. So I'm going to run with this little hashtag
right.
and turn it into like a thing. Because you
Cool.
know me, I got to make it big.
Very cool. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week.
Hey, you too. So for Dana and Dave, I'm Matt Soltala, and thank you guys for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one of these. Again, thanks everybody. Bye.
Thanks.